Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. So I'm back with the World Chess Championship match of 2010, as you all know, Topalov and Anand. This time it is game 10 already and we are getting fairly close to the end of this matchup. Up until now, nine games have been played and the result is 4.5 against 4.5. So currently it is equalized. So in the last game it was a very long game, and also made a very long video, 24 minutes. But it was actually a very interesting games, and I had to explain a lot of variations because very early on Topalov decided to give up two pawns, two rooks for a queen, and just because of that you had many variations that could have occurred. It was a very tense and very difficult game, but this game will prove to be a little bit more relaxing, where Topalov with the white pieces had a very nice chance to actually maybe go for something more active, but he decided to actually play it cautiously and go for an endgame where he could only be the side which can press on. So without further ado, let me just show you this game. So the first move of this whole matchup, d4, also starts the game in round 10. With knight to f6, c4, we have g6 as a second move, which kinda goes away from all the games where Anand played with the black pieces besides the game 1. And after knight to c3 we have d5, so as it was in game 1, here Anand once again goes for the Gruenfeld defense. And for those of you who haven't watched or don't remember, I'm just going to repeat very quickly. In game 1 Topalov was 1-1 with the white pieces because as Anand said after the match, he forgot the move order, so it was on 20 something move that he moved with the king, which allowed actually Topalov to have a very nice attack and in the end win the game in 30 something moves. So that was a nice game. If you haven't seen it, definitely go and watch it. But let's see what happened in this game. We have pawn captures on d5, knight captures on d5, e4, knight to c3, pawn to c3, bishop to g7 and bishop to c4, so everything sticks to the main line. After that we have c5 and knight to e2. We have knight to c6, bishop to e3, castles and castles, and after this b6. So 10 moves have passed and we didn't see anything extraordinary. Typical Gruenfeld defense idea with pressuring on the d4 pawn, while on the other hand black with the move 10 starts off with something, let's say, a little bit different. So here, instead of playing b6, sometimes you see queen to c7, sometimes you see knight to a5, sometimes you see bishop to g4, so sorry, not like that, but like this, bishop to g4, but here sorry, after castles we see b6. People say a move that was very popular in 1970s, and it was actually a variation that was introduced and made popular by Tony Miles. And for those of you who don't know, Tony Miles was actually the first English chess grandmaster, and also very popular by that game played with Anatoly Karpov, when on move 1 he responded after e4 with a6 and in the end won the game. So a little bit of a chess history trivia there for you. And yeah, b6, definitely a different idea that Anand tries to use in this game. After this we have queen to d2, bishop to b7, so the very simple idea after b6 you want to develop the bishop on b7 and have it on this very nice diagonal. Rook to c1, rook from a to c1, rook to c8, and rook from f to d1. White has finished the development. We have pawn captures on d4, pawn captures on d4, and queen to d6. As you can see, just for a little bit of a small tempo, black is behind in the development. He only now developed the queen to d6 and still has to develop the rook, while on the other hand, white is the one who developed all of his pieces. And that is the theme of the game for the moment, and it will be until the end of the game. Here, white is the one with the upper hand, and Topalov tries to hold it on until the end game. After this he plays d5 pretty quickly, and after knight to a5 plays bishop to b5. Anand is usually the one who wants to draw the game with the black pieces and try to win it with the white pieces, so he doesn't hold off and he goes for the exchange. Rook to c1, rook to c1, and after that rook to c8. h3, some people criticized Topalov for actually making this move because it was thought to be too passive, and it allowed Anand to exchange the other pair of rooks. So rook to c1 and queen to c1, and even after that to play e6 to kind of exchange as much material as possible, not to make it easy for Topalov to go and maybe try to win with some activity or something like that. Here we have knight to f4, pawn captures on d5, and knight captures on d5. And as you can see, it is a game that could be played, but still queens are on the board, so both of the players need to be careful. One thing that you could consider is bishop captures on d5, but after that queen to d2 is played, and bishop cannot move because you lose the queen. So here after knight to b7 you do capture with the pawn, and having this passed pawn with the bishop pair could be kind of dangerous for black. So Anand decided not to go for immediate capture, and it is always very nice to have the bishop pair on this very nice b7 and g7 square. So instead of that he played f5, a very nice idea, going for this defensive pawn on e4 and try to shake up this knight in the center. But Topalov simply plays f3, pawn captures on e4, pawn captures on e4, and now queen to e5, going with another attacker on the e5 pawn. Bishop to e4 pawn, bishop to d3 defends it, and here Anand, I guess, yeah, here the position is completely equal, with both players just having the same material. The only difference is that white does have the central pass pawn, and black has the majority on the queen side. And Anand probably felt that there is not much to this position, and he quite simply put the knight back into the game. He played knight to c6, but Topalov actually found a very nice move, bishop to a6, which puts the game into a lot of complications. And unnecessary complications, not a lot of complications, but unnecessary complications. Here, what is the problem? The problem is that, for example, first and foremost, you cannot capture this because bishop to b7, queen to d5, bishop to c6, white is up a piece. So here the bishop is attacked and you have to do something about it. If you go and capture bishop to a6, you have queen to c6, and now queen cannot capture on e4, because after that we have knight to f6, and after captures you lose the queen. So instead of that you have to play something else, like for example h5 to make room for the king, and now we have bishop to f4, queen to d4, king to h2, and after this white does have a very nice setup here. King to h7 needs to be played to defend the pawn, but the queen is on the 7th rank, or at least will be after queen to e6, and it makes kind of a problematic situation here for black, also having this very nice knight in the center. So because of that, Anand probably didn't want to capture on a6. He played knight to d4, and we saw queen to c4. Queen to c4 pretty much forces bishop to d5, because if you don't do it, knight to f6 comes with a double check, and queen to g8 is a very big threat from white. So bishop to d5, queen to d5, queen to d5, and pawn to d5, we entered pretty much very soon in an endgame where white is the only side which can press on, having this very nice central d5 pawn, and of course having the bishop pair. So here we saw bishop to e5, and we seen that in this situation, first and foremost, Topalov doesn't want to give up the dark square bishop for the knight, because he would enter an endgame with opposite colored bishops, which just means an easy draw. And this is definitely something that Anand wants. So what he needs to do, he wants to improve the king, and his king is fast enough to actually come to support this pawn, and with that in mind he actually wants to continue this game. So let's see what happens. First, king to f2, king to f7, and bishop to g5. For the moment, let's say not allowing the king to come closer, but the main idea is to bring the king to e3 and then e4. Knight to f5 and g4, keeping the pawns on the light squares, because black does have the dark square bishop. Knight to d6, king to f3, and now we have knight to e8, keeping the knight as a defensive piece. Bishop to c1, knight to c7, attacking the bishop, and bishop to d3. We have bishop to d6, and now king to e4. Now the king is centralized, supporting this pawn, and okay, One other thing, after bishop to d3, and you cannot capture with the knight on d5, because quite simply bishop to c4 pins the knight, and king to e6 is met with king to e4. You will lose this knight quite easily, and after that the game. So just wanted to cover that. So here bishop to d6 was played, and only now king to e4 defends the pawn. b5, and here is definitely something that Anand does a lot. He is, after all, the one who is in a passive position here, the one who is on the defense, but he doesn't want to stand idle. He also wants to create a pass pawn on the queen side. This is why he first pushes b5. We have king to d4 and now a6 defending the b5 pawn. And that is also one other thing, since he has a dark square bishop, also he wants to keep the bishops on the pawns on the light squares. We have bishop to e2 and now king to e7, bishop to g5 check, king to d7, and now the king is in front of the pawn, which is definitely something you want to do, because this is the passed pawn, and now your other pieces can actually go and defend the other pawns. Bishop to d2 back, and now bishop to g3, g5. And actually it was in this position where it was fairly certain that Anand is the one who really needs to play precisely here, because otherwise he can find himself in a very bad position. g5 is a very nice positional move because it locks the pawn on h7, and as you can see, this pawn is on the light square, and if your king is not close, and also your knight, for example, on f8, this light square bishop can quite simply come to g4, e6, g8 and pick up these two pawns, or at least one pawn, push the other pawn h4, h5, make it capture, and then go with the other pawn to create another passed pawn. So that would be the main idea of Topalov, while on the other hand still keeping an eye on the queen side and keeping this pawn on a2. So for example, if the knight goes on the other side of the board here and here, for example, then you can enter with the king and capture these pawns which are on the light squares. So Anand really needs to play it precisely, and if he makes just a little bit of a mistake, then he will definitely pay the price. And this late in the match, it would probably mean the winning of the whole match for Topalov, because after all this is a round 10. So first he starts with bishop to f2, gives a check, king to e5 and bishop to g3, not allowing the king to go further. If king to f6, then knight to d5, you lose the pawn and you don't have too much to do here. After, even if bishop to f4 can be played, and then you will lose either this pawn or exchange the bishop pair. It will be a draw in the end. So here we have king to e4, and after that knight to e8 with ideas of knight to d6. Bishop to g4 check, king to e7, and once again, if king to d6, then actually you lose the game because of bishop to b4 check, king goes to c7, and now king to f3 attacking the bishop here. Bishop, for example, moves somewhere. Where do you want to move with it? You can move to e5, to h2, wherever you go. Now bishop can come on the e6, and the threat of actually coming to g8 and picking up this pawn is very much real, because now this king cannot come closer. He went on the other side of the board, and the knight is on a very ungrateful position. If, on the other hand, you want to play instead of this bishop to d6, quite simply bishop to a5 check, king has to go to b7 even, and then once again bishop to e6, and white is winning this game. So you shouldn't play king to d6, you should play king to e7 like Anand does. But I wanted to go into this variation to show you just like a little simple move such as this one. Instead of king to e7, you play king to d6 and you lose the entire game. Now with king to e7 this idea doesn't work, because now the king is on this side of the board. So here after this we saw bishop to e6, and now knight to d6 check, king to f3, knight to c4 attacking the bishop, and bishop to c1, bishop to d6, and you have to keep in mind that here bishop to g8 nor before doesn't work because king is on e7. Yeah, black can even allow the capture on h7, for example, after something like a5. You capture here, and you have king to f7. King to g7, king to h7 is coming, and you cannot save this bishop. So this is why you shouldn't go for this, nor did it happen. So here king to e4 was played by white. a5, bishop to g4, bishop to a3, going for the bishop exchange, and after bishop captures, knight captures, king to e5 and knight back to c4, it was quite clear that this pawn cannot be pushed anymore and that this was pretty much a drawn game. King to d4 was played and king to d6. Now the king is even on a better position, and here for the one last time I want to show that bishop to e6 now doesn't work for Topalov, because now a4 is possible, and after bishop to g8 you have played knight to e5. Bishop captures on h7, b4, and now h4, trying to play h5 and create a passed pawn here so that knight has to be sacrificed. But it is a little bit too late because b3. And here you have to be careful, because if you capture the pawn, then a3 and black is actually winning the game. Because after king to c3 there is this knight to d3 move. And the beautiful coordination between this knight, this pawn doesn't allow the king to come closer, and this pawn will actually go for the queen. So king to c2 is met with a2, you cannot come on b1 because of the pawn, you cannot come on b2 because of the knight. If you don't do that, if you just capture, you are not in time, because after this capture, once again, black gets out the queen. And having a queen actually also in this position, it is enough for black to win the game. So all of this could lead to a disaster, so you would have to play king to c3, and then quite simply after all of these exchanges, in the end white can even give up a bishop for a pawn, and it is a drawn position. So here instead all of that, after king to d6 we saw bishop to e2, not going for this idea, but now it is quite clear that it is a draw. Knight to a3, moving away the knight, you don't want to give it up and also defend the pawn. h4, and now knight to c2. King to c3, knight to b4, attacking these two pawns, bishop to b5 and knight to a2 check. King to b3, knight to b4, bishop to e2. Knight captures on d5, h5, knight to f4, attacking the bishop and the pawn. Pawn captures on g6, pawn captures on g6, and after bishop to c4, the players agreed for a draw, and after round 10, the result is 5-5. So not much to say, except Topalov could have gone for something more active and more attractive. He shouldn't force this endgame, but if in the end Anand did miss a chance, miss a move, he could have also lost the game. So yeah, looking forward to round 11, and that's pretty much it. After this 60 move game, we head on to game 11. That being said, I would like to thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.